So, picking up from your studies, it looks like since we're the one of the closest grouping next to Taiwan, and we could see how
Yes.
like that's gone out and become kind of like you could see where it gone out to the Polynesian people, and also kind of like into areas where there's Indo-Malay and all that. Um,
Yeah.
it seems like we would be very much closest to kind of like some of those originating patterns. Uh,
Yeah, sure. It's from Taiwan to the Philippines. Now, the linguists are still debating whether it was from Taiwan to the Cagayan River and from there to everywhere else, or
mm,
if other outrigger canoe riding Formosans had landed in other parts of the country at the same time and developed the languages that way. So this what I presented to you, those charts there, language charts there, those are on the basis of what they call language trees. The idea being that one
mm,
language gives rise to two languages, and those two languages give rise to two more, etc. They're changing their ideas a little bit, and they're talking now about chains, about how one language, the people speaking one language, might land in several different places and develop the languages there, and so you end up with chains. And the reason they come up with that is because it seemed the spread of the Formosan languages was very fast to the Philippines.
wow.
And
Okay.
they had some doubts about whether it could have spread that fast based on a tree, sort of, this language gives rise to that language, which gives rise to that language model. That's all. So there's a lot of things that are still unsettled. However, they're fairly certain that everything started in Taiwan. And the archaeology and the genetics, well, I'll say the archaeology and the genetics don't disagree. Let me put it that way. The geneticists have not confirmed yet. They've confirmed the linkages. So if you look at that map uh, of Austronesia that I put up, and if you take away the points of the arrows, the geneticists will say, okay, the lines, yes, these people are related to these people. But the geneticists have not been able to figure out the migration path. You have to remember that prior to that, prior to the 1980s, the standard thinking on the population of the Philippines is that it came from the south, that it
Right.
came
Right.
from Malaysia and Indonesia and up. And actually, what happened, and this might be a source of confusion for some of the early people who are studying this, is that there was a back migration. So it went from Formosa to the Philippines to Indonesia and Malaysia. And then those people in Indonesia and Malaysia moved back and came up north. And they were the people that were in Manila at the time the Spaniards took over Manila. So, for instance, if you remember that famous female spy Mata Hari, okay, she was Dutch, but Mata Hari are two Indonesian words that mean I and
Eyes.
king.
Mm.
Okay, and so you put the two together, and they become with the ligature Matang Hari. So I of the I'm sorry, not Hari is not king. I'm sorry, sun. Eye of the sun in Indonesian. Okay,
Oh.
so eye of the sun meant noon, and so you go to Tagalog, and sure enough, the Tagalog word for noon is tanghali, the shortened form of mata ng hari. But hari is not king. Hari is not noon in Tagalog. Hari is king. Noon is or sun. I'm sorry, not noon. Sun. Let me backtrack. Mata and hari are eye of the sun, which means noon. Matang hari. But in Tagalog, tanghali is uh, noon, but in Tagalog, hari is not sun, it's king. So this Indonesian word snuck its way into the Philippine language at that time. And so that's why we have mata tanghali as noon, even though the hari or hari part is not means king in Tagalog rather than sun. Sorry, that was a complicated explanation, but the point being that those people from Indonesia back migrated into the Philippines and brought their language with them.
Wow. So that's really interesting because that makes
That's a big shift for a lot of folks because most, like you said, most people think that everybody just came from south and just kind of pushed everybody back up north. But so they're saying the most recent research is that folks actually came all the way from the north, then went back down. They went through the mountains, went back down south, went into Indonesia and Malaysia, and then came back up.
Came back up. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
is
Makes
that
a
many
lot
are
of
of
we
them.
talking
sense.
about a time period of 3,000? This sounds like it might actually go further back, like 10,000 years.
Well, okay, the current thinking is that the Taiwanese moved to the Philippines around 4,000, 4,500 years ago. The Negritos moved up around 10,000 years ago. So the Negritos were there first. And yes, you're right. It seems like it's not that long a period of time, which is why they're thinking about more of a chain migration rather than, I'm sorry, a chain language spread rather than a tree type of language spread.